He had stopped tasting his food 2 months before she arrived, not because he wanted to, because someone in his own kitchen had tried to poison him, and he couldn't afford to trust what was placed in front of him anymore. So he ate only what his bodyguards tested first, only what came from sealed packages he opened himself, only what felt safe enough to swallow without wondering if this would be the last meal he'd ever have. And then a woman he didn't ask for showed up at his compound gate with a reference letter and eyes that didn't beg for anything. In the world of organized power, where loyalty is currency and silence is survival, there are people who control through fear and people who endure through invisibility. He was the first. She appeared to be the second, but what neither of them understood yet was that invisibility, when used with intention, becomes its own kind of control. If you've ever wondered how the quietest person in the room can hold the most dangerous knowledge, this is the kind of story we tell on Love, Lies, and Crimes. His name was Kong Min-jun, though most people who worked for him never said it aloud. They called him what you call someone whose decisions determine whether you see tomorrow: sir, boss, in whispers, something closer to fear than a name. He ran a network that didn't show up in newspapers because newspapers didn't write about things that couldn't be proven. Import businesses that moved more than fabric, nightclubs where the real transactions happened in rooms without windows, legal on the surface, brutal underneath. He was 42 and had survived longer than most men in his position because he understood something essential about power. It's not about being the strongest, it's about making sure everyone believes you might be. Min-jun lived in a compound outside Seoul that looked like luxury but functioned like a fortress. High walls, cameras in every corridor, guards who rotated shifts so no one got too comfortable. He had a chef, a driver, a cleaner, and a rotating staff of people whose job was to make sure his life ran smoothly while he made decisions that kept a fragile ecosystem of fear and profit balanced. The poisoning attempt had come from someone close. That's what made it unforgivable. Not a rival, not a competitor, someone inside. Someone who had eaten at his table, someone who had smiled and bowed and waited for the exact right moment to put something in his soup that would have stopped his heart within 20 minutes. They never found out who. The chef was questioned, the cleaner, 2 guards. All of them denied it, and because Min-jun couldn't prove which one had done it without destabilizing everything, he made a choice that people in his position often make. He got rid of all of them, sent them away, replaced the entire household. That's when she arrived. Her name was Ji-woo. She was 28, small in stature, with the kind of face that people forget 5 minutes after meeting, not because she wasn't attractive, but because she didn't ask to be seen. She wore plain clothes, kept her hair tied back, spoke only when spoken to, and even then just enough to answer the question. The reference letter she brought said she had worked for a family in Busan. Elderly couple, no drama, no complaints. The family had passed away and she was looking for new work. Min-jun's head of security checked it. It seemed legitimate. They needed someone to clean, prepare basic meals, maintain the private quarters. She didn't ask for much money, didn't ask questions. She was hired. For the first 2 weeks, she was practically invisible. She came in early, before Min-jun woke. She cleaned quietly, efficiently. She prepared simple meals and left them on the counter for him to inspect, test, eat, or ignore as he chose. She didn't try to make conversation, didn't smile too much, didn't hover. When he walked into a room, she stepped aside. When he dismissed her, she left. It was exactly what he wanted. Someone who understood that in his world, curiosity was dangerous and silence was respect. But there was something Min-jun didn't know. Every night after he went to bed, Ji-woo stayed awake. Not in the servants' quarters where she was supposed to sleep, in the kitchen, watching. She had noticed something in her first week, small things. A guard who lingered too long near the refrigerator when he thought no one was looking. Another who asked her questions about Min-jun's eating schedule, framed as casual but asked with too much focus. A third who mentioned too carefully that the previous staff had left suddenly, and wasn't it strange? Ji-woo didn't trust coincidence. She had learned a long time ago that in homes where power lives, danger follows. And she had learned something else too, that the people who survive aren't the ones who fight loudest, they're the ones who see what others miss. So she began watching, and what she saw made her certain that the first poisoning attempt hadn't been the last. There were 3 guards who worked the night rotation. They switched every 8 hours, but there was a gap, a small window around 2 in the morning when the cameras in the kitchen corridor were briefly offline for a scheduled reboot. 40 seconds, just enough time for someone to slip in, do something, and slip out. Ji-woo stayed in the kitchen during that window. The first night, nothing. The second night, nothing. On the third night, she heard footsteps, soft, deliberate. She pressed herself into the shadows near the pantry and watched as one of the guards, a man named Sung-ho, stepped into the kitchen. He moved quickly, opened the refrigerator, pulled out a container of soup that had been prepared for Min-jun's breakfast, took a small vial from his pocket, tilted it over the soup. Ji-woo didn't move, didn't breathe. She watched him stir it in, close the container, put it back. He left as quietly as he'd come. She waited 5 minutes, then she took the soup, poured it down the drain, cleaned the container, and made a fresh batch herself. She put it back in the same spot. She didn't write a note, didn't report it, didn't say a word. The next morning, Min-jun ate the soup. He didn't die. Sung-ho noticed. She could see it in the way he watched Min-jun at breakfast, confused, tense, but he couldn't ask, couldn't check, because asking would reveal what he'd done. Ji-woo said nothing. She went about her work as if nothing had happened. But the next night she stayed awake again, and the night after that. It happened again a week later. Different guard this time, same method, same window of time, same vial. This time it was something meant for Min-jun's tea. Ji-woo waited until the guard left, then replaced the tea with a fresh preparation. Again, she said nothing. This became her routine. For 2 months, she quietly intercepted every poisoning attempt before it reached Min-jun. She never confronted anyone, never told him what she was doing. She simply undid the damage before it could take effect, and Min-jun had no idea.
He noticed other things, though. He noticed that he felt better, stronger. He started tasting his food again, cautiously at first, then with more confidence. He stopped losing sleep over every meal. The paranoia that had gripped him after the first attempt began to ease, not because he trusted people more, but because nothing bad had happened in months. He started to think maybe he'd overreacted. Maybe the first poisoning had been an isolated incident. Maybe the new staff was clean. He didn't realize the new staff was the only reason he was still alive. But someone else noticed. The guards who had been trying to kill him realized their attempts weren't working, and they started to suspect why. Sung-ho cornered Ji-woo one afternoon in the hallway outside the kitchen. He didn't threaten her directly, he didn't need to. He stood too close, smiled too slowly, and said something that sounded polite but wasn't. "You work very hard, Ji-woo. Always awake, always watching. I hope you're getting enough rest." She looked at him with the same blank, forgettable face she showed everyone. "I sleep fine," she said. "Good, because this house can be dangerous for people who see too much." She nodded, said nothing, walked past him. That night, she stayed awake as usual, but this time she moved differently. She didn't just watch, she started documenting. Small things, who went where, when. She kept a notebook hidden in her room and wrote everything down in careful detail, not because she planned to show anyone, but because she understood something about survival. Information is power, and if they came for her, she needed leverage. 2 weeks later, Min-jun asked to see her. It was late afternoon. She was cleaning the hallway near his office when one of the guards told her the boss wanted to speak with her. Her stomach tightened, but her face didn't change. She followed the guard into Min-jun's private study. He was sitting behind his desk, papers spread in front of him. He didn't look up right away. "You've been here 3 months," he said. "Yes, sir." "No complaints? No issues?" "No, sir." He looked up then. His eyes were sharp, measuring. "You don't talk much." "I don't have much to say." He studied her for a long moment. She didn't flinch, didn't look away, just stood there, calm and still. "The previous staff talked all the time," he said, "always asking questions, always explaining things I didn't ask about." She nodded slightly. "Do you know why I got rid of them?" "No, sir." "Because someone tried to kill me, and I didn't know who." He said it plainly, watching for her reaction. She didn't give him one. "I'm sorry that happened." "Are you?" "Yes, it's a terrible thing not to know who to trust." He leaned back in his chair, still watching her. "Do you know what I've noticed about you, Ji-woo?" "No, sir." "You're forgettable, in a good way. You do your work, you stay quiet, and you don't make me think about you. That's rare. Most people want to be noticed. I just want to do my job." "And what is your job?" "To keep the house running, to make things easier for you." He nodded slowly, then he dismissed her. She left without another word. But that conversation stayed with him, because Min-jun was good at reading people, and something about her answer felt too careful, too precise, like someone who had thought through exactly how to be invisible. He started paying more attention. Not obviously, he didn't follow her or question her, but he noticed things. The way she always seemed to be awake when he came downstairs late at night. The way certain foods appeared fresher than they should have been given when they were prepared. The way she sometimes looked at his guards with an expression that wasn't quite neutral. And then, one night, he saw something that changed everything. He couldn't sleep. It was past 2 in the morning, and he'd come downstairs for water. As he approached the kitchen, he heard voices, low, tense. He stopped in the hallway, staying out of sight. 2 of his guards were talking, Sung-ho and another man named Jin-woo. "She's the problem," Sung-ho was saying. "You don't know that. I know he's still alive, and I know every time we try something goes wrong. The soup gets replaced, the tea gets switched. It's her. She's just a maid. She's more than that. She's watching, and if she knows, we're dead." There was a pause, then Jin-woo spoke again, quieter. "So what do? We get rid of her first, then we finish the job." Min-jun stood frozen in the hallway. His mind moved through the implications in seconds. They had been trying to kill him, multiple times, and someone had been stopping them. Ji-woo. He moved silently back to his room, didn't confront them, didn't react. Not yet, because confronting them without proof would only make them more dangerous. Instead, he did what he always did when he needed to understand something fully. He watched. The next night, he pretended to go to bed as usual, but he stayed awake, door cracked, listening. Around 2 in the morning, he heard footsteps in the hallway, quiet, deliberate. He moved to where he could see without being seen. It was Ji-woo, moving through the dark hallway toward the kitchen. She wasn't stumbling or cautious. She moved like someone who had done this many times before. Min-jun followed, keeping distance, staying silent. He watched as she entered the kitchen and positioned herself in the shadows near the pantry. And then he watched as Sung-ho appeared exactly as he had in the hallway conversation. Watched as Sung-ho opened the refrigerator, pulled out a container, added something from a vial, and left. And then he watched as Ji-woo waited, calm and still, before stepping forward. She took the container, poured the contents into the sink, rinsed it thoroughly, and prepared something fresh. She worked quickly, efficiently, without hesitation. Then she put the new container back exactly where the poisoned one had been. She cleaned up, checked the kitchen, and then she left, moving back through the dark hallway to her quarters. Min-jun stood in the shadows for a long time after she was gone. She had been saving his life, for months, every night, without saying a word, without asking for anything, without even letting him know. The question was, why? The next morning, Min-jun didn't eat the breakfast Ji-woo prepared. He asked her to come to his office again. This time, when she entered, he gestured for her to close the door. "Sit," he said. She hesitated. Staff didn't sit in his office, but she did as he asked. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "How long have you been staying awake at night?" Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, a recognition that the game had changed. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "Yes, you do." Silence. "I saw you last night, in the kitchen. I saw what you did." She didn't deny it, didn't try to explain. She just sat there, waiting. "How many times?" he asked. 17. 17 times. The number hung in the air like a weight. 17 times. 17 times someone in my house tried to kill me, and you stopped them. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you didn't know who to trust. If I told you, you might not have believed me, or you might have acted too quickly and made things worse. They needed to reveal themselves fully before you could deal with them. And you decided that for me. I decided to keep you alive. How you dealt with the rest was your choice." He leaned back, studying her with new eyes. "Who are you, Ji-woo?" "I'm exactly who I said I was." "No, you're not. People don't do what you've done without a reason." She met his gaze, and for the first time he saw something other than blankness in her face. Not aggression, not fear, something quieter, something that looked like old, tired understanding. "My father worked for someone like you," she said. "Different city, different organization, but the same world. He was loyal, he did everything right, and when someone wanted his boss dead, they killed my father first because he was in the way. No trial, no warning, just gone."
I'm sorry. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand. I know how this world works. I know that loyalty means nothing if you're not useful. And I know that the people closest to you are the most dangerous because they're the ones you don't watch. So you came here to, what, protect me? I came here to work, but when I saw what was happening, I made a choice. Because I've seen what happens when good men die and bad men take over. The world doesn't get better, it just gets worse. You think I'm a good man? I think you're better than the people trying to kill you. It wasn't a compliment. It was a calculation, and Min-jun understood that. "What do you want?" he asked. "Nothing. Everyone wants something. I want to keep working. I want to be left alone, that's all." He didn't believe that was all, but he believed it was all she would admit to. "The guards," he said. "Sung-ho and Jin-woo. There are others?" "One more, Park Jae-min. He's been slower to act, but he's part of it." "How do you know?" "I listen. I watch. They talk when they think no one's paying attention." Min-jun nodded slowly, then he stood. "Thank you," he said. She looked surprised, maybe because men like him didn't say thank you often, or maybe because she hadn't expected to survive this conversation. "What will you do?" she asked. "What I should have done the first time, deal with it properly." She stood as well, but before she could leave, he spoke again. "Ji-woo?" She turned back. "If you ever decide you want more than just to be left alone, tell me." She nodded once, then she left. 2 days later, Sung-ho, Jin-woo, and Park Jae-min disappeared. No one asked where they went. No one talked about it. New guards were hired. The house continued to function. And Ji-woo continued her work, as quiet and invisible as before. But something had shifted. Min-jun found himself trusting her in ways he didn't trust others, not because she'd proven her loyalty through words, but because she'd proven it through action. Repeated, quiet, uncelebrated action. He started asking her opinion on small things, what she thought of new staff, whether something seemed off. She answered honestly, briefly, and without trying to gain favor. Months passed, the house stabilized, the poisoning attempts stopped. Min-jun's organization continued operating, making money, maintaining power. And through it all, Ji-woo remained in the background, doing her work, keeping quiet, keeping preventing disasters before they could take root. Until one night, almost a year after she'd started, Min-jun asked her a question that surprised them both. "Do you ever wish you'd done something different with your life?" They were in the kitchen, late. He'd come down for tea and found her there, as he often did now. She was wiping down the counters. She thought about it before answering. "Every day," she said. "Then why don't you?" "Because wishing doesn't change anything, only action does."
You could leave, start over somewhere else. I could, but I won't. Why not? She looked at him then, and he saw something in her face he hadn't seen before. Not sadness exactly, something deeper, something that looked like acceptance. Because I'm good at this, she said. I'm good at seeing danger before it arrives. I'm good at fixing things quietly. And in a world like this, that skill keeps people alive. Maybe that's not the life I wanted, but it's the life I'm useful for. You think that's enough, being useful? I think it's better than being useless, and I think it's better than pretending the world is something it's not. Minjun didn't argue, because he understood exactly what she meant. They stood in the kitchen together, two people who had learned to survive by different methods, with the same understanding, that the world was not fair, that power was not distributed evenly, that danger was constant, and that sometimes survival meant doing things that others would never see or understand. I'm glad you're here, Minjun said quietly. Jiwoo nodded. She didn't say she was glad too, because that wasn't who she was, but she didn't leave either. She finished wiping the counter, made the tea, set it in front of him without testing it first, and he drank it without hesitation. Because trust in their world wasn't built through declarations or promises, it was built through repetition, through quiet action, through knowing that someone had chosen again and again to keep you alive when it would have been easier to walk away. The months continued, the years began, and Ji-woo remained. Not because she was asked to, not because she was trapped, but because she had found something that people like her rarely find, a place where her particular skills mattered, where her vigilance meant something, where her invisibility was not a weakness but a strength. Minjun's organization grew, competitors fell, rivals emerged and were dealt with. The world outside the compound continued its chaos, and inside, Ji-woo kept the house running, kept watching, kept preventing disasters before they could take root. There were more attempts over the years, not poisonings, other things. A security breach that she caught before it became critical, a staff member who was passing information to a rival and who Ji-woo identified through nothing more than careful observation, a financial discrepancy that would have cost Minjun millions if she hadn't noticed the pattern. Each time she brought it to him quietly, without drama, without expecting reward, and each time he dealt with it.
They never became friends. That wasn't possible in their world, but they became something else. Two people who understood the weight of constant vigilance, who knew what it cost to trust no one fully, who had chosen in their own ways to survive by watching carefully and acting precisely. People who worked in the house sometimes wondered about her, why she stayed, why she never seemed to want more, why the boss treated her differently than other staff, with a kind of quiet respect that seemed unusual. But they never asked, because asking questions in that house was dangerous, and Ji-woo preferred it that way. She had learned long ago that the most powerful position was not at the top where everyone watched you. It was in the middle, where no one remembered you were there, where you could see everything and be seen by no one. She had learned that survival wasn't about being the strongest or the loudest or the most beloved. It was about being necessary in ways that people didn't recognize until you were gone. And she had learned that sometimes saving someone's life had nothing to do with gratitude or recognition. It had to do with understanding that the alternative was worse. Years passed. Minjun got older. The organization changed hands, slowly, as he began preparing for a different kind of life. He never married, never had children, but he built something that would outlast him. And through it all, Ji-woo remained. When people asked her why she stayed so long in one position, she gave simple answers. The work was steady, the pay was fair, she didn't have anywhere else to go. But the truth was more complicated than that. The truth was that she had found a kind of purpose in the vigilance, in the quiet protection, in knowing that her presence meant the difference between safety and catastrophe. It wasn't the purpose she would have chosen if the world had been different, but it was the purpose she had. And she had learned to accept that sometimes purpose isn't what you want, it's what you're able to give. On a winter night, many years after she'd first arrived at the compound, Minjun called her into his study one last time. He was older now, grayer, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "I'm retiring," he said, "leaving the country, starting something quieter." She nodded.
She'd suspected this was coming. "I want you to come with me." She looked at him, surprised. "Not as staff," he continued, "as someone I trust, someone who's kept me alive longer than I deserved." "I'm not family," she said. "No, you're more reliable than family." She smiled slightly at that. It was as close to a joke as he ever came. "What would I do?" she asked. "Whatever you want. You've earned the right to rest." She thought about that. Rest. A life without vigilance, without watching, without waiting for danger. It sounded impossible. "I'll think about it," she said. "Don't think too long. I leave in 3 weeks." She nodded and left the study. That night, she sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd spent so many nights watching, waiting, protecting, and she thought about what her life had been, what it had meant, whether it had mattered. She thought about her father who had died for his loyalty. She thought about all the people who had tried to kill Minjun and failed because she'd been there. She thought about the strange, quiet partnership they'd built over the years, built not on affection, but on mutual understanding. And she realized something. She had spent her entire life trying to be invisible, trying to survive by not being seen, and in doing so, she had become the most important person in a powerful man's life, not because she demanded it, but because she had chosen, quietly and repeatedly, to act when action mattered. That was worth something. Maybe not the life she would have chosen, but a life that had meant something nonetheless. 3 weeks later, when Minjun left the country, Ji-woon went with him, not as a servant, not as staff, but as someone who had saved his life 17 times and never asked for recognition. And in a quiet house, in a quiet country, far from the chaos they'd left behind, they lived out their years in the strange peace that comes from understanding exactly what the other has survived. They never talked about the past much, never revisited the poisonings or the danger or the years of vigilance. But sometimes, late at night, Minjun would find Ji-will in the kitchen, awake, watching, old habits, and he would make tea, set a cup in front of her, and sit in the quiet. Because some trusts don't need words, some partnerships don't need explanations, and some lives are saved not through grand gestures, but through small actions repeated so many times that they become invisible, until the day you realize that without them, everything would have fallen apart. If this story made you think about the power of quiet vigilance, or about the people in your life who protect you in ways you might not see, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if it stayed with you, consider sharing it with someone who might understand why silence can be the most powerful form of loyalty.